So let's talk about GenAI. It's a webinar series we've done. I think this is I don't recall anymore, but it's the seventh or eighth webinar such. And to start things, I would like to say who we are a little bit. So All Digital is a pan-European association based in Brussels. Our main mission is to help our members, 100 or so member organizations, in the promotion of digital competences and skills, and to help the European population in general to acquire such competences and skills. We have a few focus areas. We focus mostly on from basic skills to advanced, to STEAM, digital cultural heritage. So we cover several areas. And for that, we have several projects. One or two of them are in the context or bring you, let's say, this event today. And I will start. Oops, sorry, this is frozen. Okay. So I will start with the first one, the Old Digital Academy. And actually, I would like to show you a little bit. So the Old Digital Academy is an Erasmus project, which we started a year ago, more or less. It's an Erasmus project. And its main goal was to create a hub where people could access for free learning courses on several topics. The project started with AI and IoT, and in the context of AI, we decided to create this webinar series together with another project, which I think they will say a few words. Now I'll stop this. I don't know if you want to say a few words on the project, and maybe I'll show the platform while you talk. Okay.
Yes. All right. Perfect. So, as Afonso said, this webinar series is organized under the scope of two projects. So the first one is All Digital Academy, while the second one is the GenAI Edu project, which was born out of many years of our collaboration with Microsoft. It's one of our newer projects, actually. And as the name suggests, it focuses on the use of generative AI in education. This is done through a series of online courses. So the full training actually consists of 7 different courses to give you a comprehensive overview of the use of generative AI in education, how to include it, how to incorporate it, while always taking care of the ethical considerations. Apart from the courses that are available on the All Digital Academy platform, we are also organizing this webinar series and online workshops, which are open for the participants of the courses itself. And I give the floor back to Afonso to show you the platform.
Thank you there. Okay, so very briefly, because this is not really the main thing that we have here today, I just wanted to show a little bit this platform that we've built. As you can see, we have now 5 courses. This one is still, iBox is still to come. These 4 currently have already content online. You can access it. All you need to do is register for free. We also, of course, then have a series of webinars, which you can also follow by clicking here in the events button. And with that very brief introduction, let's get to the main event, I would say. I'll stop my sharing. And please.
All right. Thanks, Afonso. So, like it was already mentioned a couple of times in this very brief speech, this is a part of a webinar series, and this is actually the 4th one in this series, the 8th one in the complete ADA webinar series. And the main idea is actually to bring experts in the field and to engage in a dialogue with them. And for this today, our focus is the use of AI, generative AI, in art and music education. And with us, we have an expert of the day. And I would like to invite Ash to introduce himself before we go into the questions.
Thank you, Dio and Alphonse. My name is Ashwin. You can all call me Ash. Dare I say, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I've been playing around with it since I guess it started, and I guess for this hour, I want to be able to kind of interact with you all, show you some really interesting things, and for you guys to ask questions and participate as best as possible. A little bit about myself. I've done art my whole life. I have a degree in it ever since I was young. I've done art. I've got a degree in animation. And in my mid-20s, my life took a 180-degree turn and I got into music, became an assistant engineer abroad, started right down at the bottom and then worked my way up to being a senior engineer. And then I came back to Europe, signed a management deal. And that's when things kind of really took off for me. I was working at Apple as what is called a creative. So I was teaching at Apple, both the staff as well as the consumers. And I'm kind of here now. I teach at the Academy of Contemporary Music. I do a lot of freelance work. That's both music as well as art. And I hope today will give you a little bit of insight into my kind of working life and how I use generative AI, how I do art, and how, more importantly, how I actually am as a creative and work in this very fast changing world of technology. And getting your ideas and your questions and your interactions will be very, very useful today, as we all know this thing called AI is brand new. There, it's all subjective. It's, and it can sometimes be a bit scary, but it's there to be explored. And I'm just glad to be here to talk about some of my experiences.
Thank you very much, Ash. So I think we can start with the questions, with the discussion. Since we have a wide variety of actually participants with different backgrounds in the audience, I think it would help us to situate ourselves in this whole sphere of music and art education. As you said, AI can be scary and it's something that's new. So what do we mean when we say the use of AI in art and music education? How has AI been integrated into art, into music?
So my experience, and I think this is probably most human beings' experience, is that um, we have been doing the work all of the time, and we use these tools, whatever it might be, computer. It could even be as basic as a pen, a paintbrush, paper. Wacom tablets was a kind of big interchange. Tablets. I remember going to college, 20, 25 years ago, and I wanted to do my art on a Wacom tablet, and my art teacher said to me, "That's not art." But now most art is now created on tablets. A lot of it is, not to say that traditional forms of is not there, but I think when we talk about AI, in my experience, it is a tool. That's it. It is strictly a tool. It's there to supplement an artist. It is there to help um, creators either come to their result either quicker, to help their process. I think in now, because it's still very early days, it's used very, very heavily throughout the whole process. Um, and that's where I think, and I think that's quite normal when it comes to new technology, new tools. It gets abused. It needs to get abused. It needs to be used completely. People need to know how to break it. There needs to be allegations. There need to be laws. There needs to be things that you're seeing in the media, in Hollywood, in the music industry, all of these court cases. These are good things, I think. These things are good because it shows us where the future is going to be, where the barriers are, who the gatekeepers are going to be. These things happen, for example, with Napster. I don't know if you remember Napster and the whole age of digital downloading. That changed the whole music industry, and now I don't know who still who downloads via Napster, who downloads illegally. Yet everything is now on these digital distribution platforms like Spotify and iTunes. But not to digress, I think when we talk about AI being integrated within, what does it mean? I think it's a tool. I firmly believe it's a tool. It might change as, depending on what softwares or how the development of this technology emerges. I've been reading a lot on quantum computing. That's going to influence AI. That's going to influence the processing of computers as well. But as a human being and as a creative, for me, it's a tool. It's just another tool. It's like me picking up another, a different kind of pencil or a different kind of paintbrush. a different, a different type of Photoshop, a different type of, Procreate on my iPad or whatever it might be. So it's a different version of it. Does that answer the question?
It does, and it brings me nicely to the second question, which is okay, if I want to ask you if AI can enhance creativity and expression in art, I think this is something that you already covered in the first question. But how can that be done? How can we use AI as a tool to enhance this creativity in art and music education and in learning and expressing yourself?
So there's many different ways, and I think the first way I found out kind of firsthand, being a mentor and a lecturer at the Academy of Contemporary Music, especially when Chat GPT came out, and you could almost notice everybody using it because the languages sounds the same. There's still some inconsistencies. But then what I realized was that there were some students who I know who have learning difficulties, who sometimes couldn't express themselves, was able to express themselves using these tools. And it made me think very differently about how these tools were being used, because suddenly somebody who had difficulty writing, who had difficulty in being able to put down their brilliant ideas down, is now coming up with business plans, is now coming up with um you know pitch decks, business pitch decks. Suddenly their ideas are now, they know what they want, and they're getting it down. And I think in this realm, that's where generative AI can be very, very useful. It could also be very, very useful if you yourself have got the initial spark. We're still in this era that generative AI still requires a prompt. I still have problems with calling this the chat GPT, saying it's a chatbot. It's not really a chatbot. You still have to give it something in order for it to respond to you. It can't just talk to you randomly. It hasn't got there yet where it's self-thinking. So you have to give it something in order for you to get something out. And I guess now more than ever, people are starting to understand it's no longer the fact that you're going to get the answer or the result. It's the quality of your question or the quality of your prompt that is going to dictate how a user is going to interact with these AI tools. And I think now more than ever, because I'm seeing the boom gone down, especially in the art sector, and with people writing things using chat GPT and generating ideas, that kind of boom of everybody using it now is kind of subsided now, and only like the ones who really want to know how to use it, who are educating themselves in knowing how to ask the correct prompts, ask the questions, they're the ones that are really, really using it. And it's like with any technology, when something new comes out, everybody starts using it, and then it dies down, and then it stops becoming something that the majority of people use. And I think that's an important thing to notice as well. So does that answer your question with how can it kind of help the education system?
Yeah, definitely. And it also brings me towards more talking about some drawbacks of using AI in education. Could you share a bit more about that? Like, which drawbacks do you see and which challenges, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen it a positive with somebody who's had learning difficulties and they're really trying to express themselves and they can. And then I see people who are completely lazy, who are just writing things out and generating things. And you really want to say to them, that's not really your work. They're the kind of drawbacks. And I guess it's for me, it's being able to handle those conversations at this stage in this technology, um, where it's still very early. It's so early that there's nothing really out there to limit or to kind of patrol and organize all of these things that are happening that people are collecting for themselves and then putting it out and saying it's either theirs or they're doing very minimal amount of work. And I think that could be quite dangerous. And I think if we just if we just have these tools without the right legal systems and the right, like, and I mentioned earlier on about the right legal battles that are currently happening, we're not going to know how far things can be pushed. A very big thing that I don't know if you guys have heard about, but in Hollywood, and they're very far ahead in the visual effects and animation with the uses of deep fake within their feature films. They're very good. They're excellent. But now I know one of the big things that happened last year was now that they're trying to get actors to sign off of having them shot a particular scene. They're trying to get them to sign off and saying, right, we don't need you again. If we need to reshoot, we'll just use our animation, our proprietary deep fake technology. And I can understand why there's been so many strikes, because there's been a strike because of that, because actors are not being called in to reshoot. They're not being utilized as actors again in that way. So these things need to be dealt with. Things like this need to be explored. They need to be discussed. They need to be in the courtrooms. They need to be, there needs to have these lawsuits. These lawsuits are good things because we're going to understand where we can, how far we're allowed to push things like this. The uses of people's voices. Um, you know, Someone took my voice the other day. I allowed them, but if I didn't give them my allowance, I'd be hearing my voice against, whatever it might be. So this is where we're in a realm at the moment where it's quite dangerous. Even like the people in the fraud systems who's like, defrauding people in credit cards and stuff. They're mimicking people's voices on the phone and things like that. So there is a whole area which people are abusing. But again, you're going to get that with new technology. I think it's normal. It's going to happen with anything new that comes out. And I just think it's just a matter of time before it starts becoming regulated and it starts becoming people are going to start embracing it. Because right now, I think why people are considering this whole, is there drawbacks? It's because not fully everyone's embracing. I think when people start embracing the uses of it, then it's going to start the utilization of AI, generative AI is going to be really, really good. It's going to be put in good hands.
Yeah, I think important point you mentioned is also that it's still quite early in the development of the AI tools, generative AI tools, specifically to be used in education. And at the same time, we are sort of faced with it and we have to use it in educational activities, and having this balance of knowing how to and what is the good way of incorporating it. It's not something that's still that is easy to answer and easy to do. Like
I
we're
I
learning.
have I have said this many times, especially in the place that I teach at, and in many other places that I give workshops and seminars. I really encourage everybody to use AI. I encourage I it's one of it's important because this is what's happening now. Um if a student wants to explore it, I think it's the way forward. I think anything new that is going to make people think differently, use tools differently, and maybe expand on their ideas, I say go for it. There's always going to be problems no matter what, even without AI. um we just need to start embracing it and really start understanding it in a little bit in a bit of a different way. But I've always said I think in education spaces now more than ever, I think it's very, very important to let students use the technology, because when they hit the real world, where after their education and they're going out in the real world, they're going to be bombarded by, you know, the real life of companies using different technologies, people interacting with people in different ways. It's all technology based now.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And you were touching on this a bit on the previous question as well, when it comes to ethical considerations and ethical use of AI in education. How can educators ensure that the AI tools are used responsibly and ethically? So one thing is, okay, incorporating in educational activities because the tool is here, but how can we make sure that is done responsibly and safely?
That's a great question. I think about, and I know this is a very, very basic example of this, but this is the best example that I can give. When you have a really, really good teacher that knows the subject or tries to understand the subject and communicates that to their student, they are effectively teaching their student how to understand that particular area. If an educator does not really understand the uses of these things, or they're not familiar with it, that's when it starts becoming out of hand. You know, you can't tell a student not to use something or to don't use it for the wrong reasons. If somebody wants to use something for the wrong reasons, they will. But as a responsible educator or an adult, if you know more about, if you are somebody that talks about it, that's clued up on that, and then you have those discussions with your students, I'm pretty sure your students are going to be very, very kind of respectful towards that. It's like when your parents have told you, or they've given you a scenario of you maybe not doing something. They just haven't told you not to do it, but they've explained why you mustn't do something. It still gives you the choice to go out and do it, you know, but it just allows you to see it differently, you know. And I think the key here is the educators being educated themselves on the technology and to talk about it with their students. And in that way, you're putting the tools in the student's hand in the most positive way.
Uh, Yes, I like how all your answers are actually bringing me nicely to the other questions that we prepared, even without knowing how the discussion is actually going to go. Like you said, knowing the tool and knowing how to use it for the educators and having the right skills is something that's crucial at this point. That is crucial always. But from your point of view, which specific skills do you have in mind? So, what skills and knowledge are essential for educators thinking about music and art educators to effectively use AI in their teaching practices? Maybe here we can also touch upon the copyright issues, the intellectual property rights as well, which is something that often comes up when using generative AI.
Yeah. So I think in terms of making sure that it's used correctly is, again, how I don't think it's definitely no longer about doing the work at hand. I think the students that come into a classroom to learn about music and learn about art, they kind of they will know how to do it. There's so many tools out there to do it. I think for the educator is to probably talk to them about the deeper subjects of what is creativity, how creativity can inspire the way in which you work. Other things, if you start talking about the subject at hand, which is let's create a song, you know, you can definitely do that and break it down. But again, there's so many tools that can do this whole process for you that it doesn't alleviate from somebody just going out and taking all that information, which is either subjective or objective, and just going into Suno or going into Midjourney and then doing a piece of artwork and saying, I did this. I think it's far more effective for an educator to talk to a student or talk to their, whoever they're mentoring or teaching, and talk to them about the process of creativity, because that's probably what's lost at this present moment. We're always talking about the result. We're never talking about the process anymore, you know? And I think that's probably what makes the education system around AI going to be slightly different and a bit more interesting, is if we start talking about the bigger subjects rather than the actual facts of and the objective things of how to get something done. And I guess coming to like the copyright parts of that, I think I've mentioned it before. I think because we're in very much early days of it, people are gonna abuse it. I think Drake very recently, I read about this, I think about a week ago or a couple of weeks ago. He's a very big artist. I'm sure you all know the hip hop artist Drake, the Canadian rapper. He used AI. He used a sample of Tupac, and he's been very much criticized for it, you know, and he was expecting that, but he's also an artist who's actually used a real sample of Michael Jackson, in his album from I think 6 or 7 years ago, a real life sample of Michael Jackson, and here he is today using an AI sample of Tupac. And again, he's been faced with loads of lawsuits, and these things are going to happen, not just in music, but um in art and in animation, because it's now the AI is now coming to moving pictures with I think it's called Suno, that hasn't been released yet. I'm sure you've seen some things around with that. It's absolutely crazy. But again, I think we need to start using it in order to start understanding where the lawsuits will happen. And I think with the right creative people, they're not going to break the rules. I mean, I have access to a lot of these tools. I make sure that I'm a beta tester, or I have access. I don't think I've done anything that's crazy, and that's and I don't know if it's because I wouldn't do that, but I think if you're doing it with the intention of understanding and learning, I don't think it's going to be put into the wrong hands. I think the people that are using it in the wrong way are people that don't understand it, and they just want their result. They want to have this, and then they go to someone to get it done. And I think those things are where the issues are. And I think also some of these companies where you are doing what is called voice cloning and avatar cloning, where you can clone yourself, things like that. Um, I've seen now on these websites, you need to sign off on the license agreement with that. And if you're gonna clone your voice in a very, very professional manner in these big studios that they've got now online, you actually need to recite their waiver in order for them to clone your voice. I think it's called HeyGen. There's one called HeyGen where they can clone your voice very, very, very meticulously. And before you do that, you need to actually recite their waiver. So you can't really, they're not allowed. You can't do it basically if you're a dead person, because you can't get someone to read out that. Um, I'm sure there's going to be companies that will abuse that and will pay off whoever. But again, we don't know um, of those just yet. We don't know how these things are gonna be really, really utilized in a commercial forefront.
Yes, yes. Think you're mentioning many points that are good to reflect on and good to keep in mind and good to think for all of us, even after this webinar. Now, thinking more specifically about your practice and your work with students, working as a mentor, how does the integration of AI change perhaps some traditional pedagogical approaches, some traditional pedagogical approaches and tools that you were using before?
Um, it's really strange. I think at the beginning with everything, you think it changes a lot, but then when I started learning about it, I actually realized it didn't change too much. It actually it actually gave me more to talk about. It gave me more to discuss. It gave me more to draw upon. It gave me so much more to draw upon. I could bring up examples of things that I wouldn't be able to normally bring up. And I was able to discuss why now more than ever it's important to be very good at your craft. Because now we're up in an industry where you're not just up against another human being, you're up against a computer. And the only edge that you've got is to be a human being. And again, it comes down to do I want a result or do I want an experience? And I think people now more than ever, because there's this hardly any human interaction, people actually want an experience now. People want to hear about your story. They want to hear how you're going to teach them. And I think now students, especially the young adults coming up of today, especially the ones in the creative field, they're getting their results. When I say results, they're getting to their final product so quickly, so much more quickly, and so much more effectively than I could imagine. That now the discussion is no longer about what do you use, how do you use it. It's now, right, where are the ideas, how are the ideas are we going to form in order for you to use all of this great stuff that's out there, because we want to have those initial ideas. So I think for me now, it's all about the process, and within that process I get to actually understand my students a lot more, because I'm no longer talking to them about what they're creating. I'm talking to them about who they are as a person, um, you know, without getting too personal and things like that. But you're getting into who they are as a person, because that is what is going to be giving the result of whatever they're going to be using at the end of the pipeline of whatever they're creating. So I think it's really enhanced the way in which I work now. And it also gives me the opportunity to, speak to students who give me the end result, and I can say, right, show me how you got there. And when they don't have anything to say about how they got there, they've already opened themselves up to a big void where it's like, well, you haven't done the work then, you know, you've got the result, but you haven't done the work in order to get there. And I think that is where they're at right now with the students that I mentor, is that they understand now it's how we get there, you know. And that's been really nice, because it's allowed me to make meaningful connections with my students and for the people that I help and mentor. And I think they appreciate it, because I'm no longer telling them what to do. I'm now just guiding them in a way of thinking about getting something done.
Mhm. And focusing on this learning process and inclusion and personalized learning, this is something that you were also mentioning at the beginning, how with the use of AI tools, you saw some changes in your students. You saw how they, they could do some things perhaps easier than they were doing it before. How does the AI and the use of generative AI tools contribute to this personalized learning in art and music education?
I think first of all, it's very exciting when you put a tool in someone's hands. Like, I'm sure when you first heard of Midjourney or Chat GPT, you was asking it really silly questions, as anybody would. It's exciting. And again, when that dies down, it's now the quality of your question now is where it comes into play. So when it comes to the students and how they, I guess, deal with all of this, it's more of a case of um you allow them to play, you allow them to get excited, you let them get it out of their system, and then you still then come back to the root. What is it that we're trying to accomplish here? What is it we're trying to do? And then suddenly they're opening up a different part of their mind, because you're essentially you've already given them the world with things like Chat GPT. You've given them the answer to everything. But and people think that's a cheat code. It's not, because again, it's what you're asking Chat GPT now, how you're going to utilize it to create a business plan, or how you're going to utilize it to create an amazing prompt, or how you're going to word an email, or how you're going to correct your spelling and grammar. So I think it's being able to let them use it, get excited about it, and then coming back to the root cause of how are we going to learn from this? How are we going to utilize these as tools? Because, and I keep it very honest with my students. I'm like, you can definitely wing through life just by putting in the question just to get the answer. But I often say real life is not that easy. When you get to the working world, life is not a chat GPT, you know. There's experiences involved. There's things that you can't ask a computer straight off the bat. You're going to have to live through some of these experiences. And I think that resonates with them a lot. And they have to, again, do the work for themselves.
Mhm. I like your quote, life is not ChatGPT. This is also something to remember and to take from this webinar, perhaps. You mentioned many different tools already, so perhaps we could focus more on what type of AI tools and perhaps also what exact tools are you using currently, or if you know some tools that might be perhaps useful to share with our audience when it comes to art and music education.
Yeah, of course. Um, so one of the things I use now on a daily basis, I'm sure you all have heard of it, is ChatGPT. How I actually use ChatGPT now to how I used it when it first came out is much different, which is really good. I actually train ChatGPT. I can give you an example. I'll give you. Is it all right to give an example, Dia? Like to share my screen and show
Yeah,
everybody.
of course.
Let me share my screen. Share. So you can see my, I mean, it's quite messy. Sorry about this, guys. Right. So, I've got a chat session here, and this is actually from a prompt. So I've trained ChatGPT to say something in a certain way, and so that every time I put in a city or a location, you can see my here, it gives me a really nice prompt. Okay. And what I've done is I can put these prompts now into Midjourney to create some cities. And I'll show you the examples that I've got. So I've got something that I'm working on currently. So this is in real time. Um, I'm working on like posters of different cities around the world. And as you can see, they're quite consistent in their style. They're very vector style based. The problem with Midjourney and DALL-E and all these generative AI art programs is that they're very difficult to knock out a very similar style. Um, because but you can see I've done Rome, I've done London, and I've done Paris. And I'm planning to make these posters, one for each country with a nice little description, and I put it together in Photoshop. So what I can do here is if somebody can give me a well-known city, uh, I'll do it real time with you now. So I'd make it a city that is quite recognized by the internet. I have tried this with cities that or places that are not very well known and it's quite difficult. But does somebody want to give me an example and I'll put it in now?
What about Budapest?
Budapest. Can you spell it Budapest? Is that
BU. Yeah, correct.
right? There we go. It's giving me a prompt based on my example from above from my training. I copy that. I then go into Midjourney. I have my server already set up, and all I need to do is hit imagine, paste it, hit enter, and let's see what it comes out with. What do we think? Let's regenerate some more. Later on, I'll show you some of my process and you will see that in order for me to get to one final result, I have to generate maybe a few hundred times to get something that I like. So I've got some more examples here. Let's check out this first one. Let me move this out of the way. Upload one. Does this look something like Budapest?
It is Budapest.
There we go.
It's
So
really
already
perfect.
we've generated something, and if we want to variate that, we can, variate that by hitting variation 1. So are you guys familiar with Midjourney? So this is a text to image AI. You basically put in a command like I've just done, and it gives you an image. It gives you 4, and then you've got these 4 buttons here, which U1 to U4 which means upscale. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can upscale. So in this instance, I've upscaled 1, which is here, or I can variate 1. V1 means variate, and it's now gonna variate just this 1. Now, what I tend to do, and this is a thing that I've learned, is I normally variate all of them. And I do this very quickly in order to get as many ideas as possible. So I'm actually playing the role of what I guess an art director would do, which is really good. So I've eliminated the process of I'm actually the art director because I can generate hundreds of ideas now. Look at all of these different ideas. So this one that I've asked to variate, it's now given me 4 different ones based off of that one. And I can variate that or upscale that. I've got different variations of the other ones, which are here. Different styles. So it's a really, really quick way to get your results. And again, like I said, I've got this based off of a prompt, which has been in Midjourney, in ChatGPT.
And Ash, if I can ask, when you variate, what does it, I mean, I know it changes the picture, but what does it variate? I mean, what criteria does it change? Is it the art style? Is it time of
Yes,
the
great. Yeah, so you can variate what you want. I variated it on a broad scale, but say for example, now we variate, let's say we variate 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It actually opens up a pop box here, and I can now add or take away from
Okay.
this prompt. I can say a vintage travel boat showcasing the enchanting at night. Right. So now it's going to take the version 4, which is this version, which is a daylight version of it, and hopefully it will give us 4 versions of it that will be slightly at night. And there we go. We've got at night. So it's whatever you decide to variate. Now, there are some instances where I like 2 or I like 2 versions, and I'm not sure. I'll give you a very good example of that. I've got one prepared here for you. Here is, let me open up my Photoshop file so you can see it. This is the final artwork. So I do a lot of album artwork. This actually looks like the person who's singing it. He looks like the Pixar version of that person. But originally he looked like that, which I didn't like. But I've blended the 2 images together in order to get his face with the kind of hair and the rest of the features that look like the artist. And then from this, which is in Photoshop, you can see they've done the lighting. That's all manually done. Again, that's an art. That's not AI doing it. This is me actually going in and processing things that I've learned, using this, and then finally coming to the final product, which was this. So this is my song that I produced for him. The song is not AI, but I produced it for him. I'm engineered it for him, and this was the kind of final from it.
I don't think we can hear the song.
Oh, sorry. I'll tell you
For some
why.
reason, but
I think I know why. It's because I didn't hit share sound.
yeah, no problem.
Share sound. There we go. Right. There we go. So this was the final product.
Girl, you got me waiting way too long.
So it gives you a really good idea. And the reason why I've used AI here, and I'll give you another example. I did this based off of this image. This is an artist called Bunji Garlin. He's a very famous artist from the Caribbean. This is AI. It does look like him. I did the artwork, and that it ended up like this. And then from the artwork, I did again the song.
So long I've been ready, so long I've been waiting, Lord. So long I've been ready, so long I've been waiting, so long I've been ready, so long I've been waiting, Lord. So long I've been ready, just wait till it works. Cruise brace up and can't brace up, they haul up on a man, brace up and bouncing like a ball, brace up, they haul up on the wall, brace up, lighters in the air, brace up, every flag, every flag, brace up, only thing I want with all of that, the road now, hand up in the air, hands.
So it just gives you an idea. And the reason why I've used AI is because of the short turnaround time. I hardly get any time to do anything these days. And when I take on these jobs, people want it in 1 day or they want it in 2 days. And I'll give you a really, really good example of this type of working and why I think it's important. I don't know if you guys remember, have you all seen Star Wars before? Yeah? This poster here, Star Wars original movie poster. Here it is. I think it's this one or this one. Let me go to images. We all recognize this, right?
Yes.
The artist that did this, right? He's a traditional painter. In the 70s, he was known for doing these lovely paintings. But because he was given a very, very short turnaround time, he didn't paint this. He traced this. He traced most of the work, most of the movie posters that you see. This one as well. I think this is a big one. These are traced. So again, when someone says AI now, I'm not saying that he used AI, but again, it's about process. He utilized what he had around him in order to get the result done. Yeah, he had a short amount of time to do it and he got it done. And I think it's really important that we sometimes understand that way of working. It doesn't take away from you doing the work, especially if you're trained in that field. No one's taken away that you can do it. I would love to do all of that by hand, but it just means they're going to have to wait a week or 2 weeks for it, you know? Does that answer your question about some of my working processes and stuff like that?
Yes, yes. And while you were actually showing your example, there was a question in the chat, who is actually creator in this case? Is it you or is it ChatGPT? Which also brings us to the ethical considerations and all the questions we were discussing before.
Another fantastic question that I don't know, really. I think, again, because I'm using the computer as a tool. It's an assistive tool, yeah. If I have thought about this very deeply. If I woke up one day and my computer turned on and it decided to speak to me and said, I want to create this artwork without me having to say it, anything, then I give full credit to the computer. But that's not what's happened here. What's happened here is I've given it parameters in order to create. It wouldn't have done that without a human being having that interaction with it. At the moment, with all of these tools, Midjourney, you own everything, especially if you're paying for it. My version of Midjourney, I've paid for my subscription for it. So anything that I generate and anything that I create from it, it belongs to me. Until that changes, that's how it is going to be for AI, I believe, because again, and I think this is maybe the corporate side of the world, once a company puts money ahead of something, it belongs to you, I guess. Until they give it away for free and there's other lawsuits that's happening, then that's a problem. Now, the one thing that I will say I'm not too sure about is when the prompts are in likeness of something, because you've probably heard about this. Create a painting in the style of Pablo Picasso or Michelangelo or James Jean or whoever. That's where I feel it can start becoming a problem. And they still haven't worked out how they're going to utilize that or a work around that. But I can see why some of the creators would be upset about that. Again, still early days. They have to work around that. There needs to be enough of abuse, unfortunately, of these things to happen before something gets dealt with, you know? And again, I've come back to the point of Napster. Something like that was abused to the point where it affected the music industry, and then it started to become regulated. And then those other things happen. And I think we just need to get to that point, which we are. It's going to take maybe a few more years, but we're getting there.
Yes, and another question we received is about tools for music production. So are there similar tools for music production, like melodies generation, sound design based
Yeah.
on prompt, and how
I've
to
got it. And
integrate?
is it Pierre, right? Pierre? Thanks for that
Yes.
question, Pierre. I'm glad that you've asked that, because I was looking forward to sharing this one with you. I've signed up to something called Suno. Now, this is crazy. I only discovered this maybe a couple months ago. Pierre, give me a style of music. If you will, give me any style of music. Give me a style of music and give me the content of a song. So what do you want the song to be about? And whilst you're doing that, I didn't share my sound, so I'm going to stop this and share my sound at the same time. So have a think about it. Share sound. Share. There we go. Right. So let me open up the chat so I can see it. Okay, no one said anything. So somebody write me a genre of song. Okay, a stoner rock talking about the world. Okay, let's put that in. A stoner rock song about taking over the world. Anything else we can
About
get?
AI taking over the world.
Okay, talking about AI
No,
taking over the world. Anything else in this song? Would you like to hear anything in particular? Okay, we'll keep it simple, but this is going to be crazy. So I've done this here
a guitar solo someone did.
with a guitar solo.
And can you add voices or no?
Well, we're gonna be. Let's hopefully we'll do some very special things. So a stoner rock song about AI taking over the world with a guitar solo. Create. Can you see at the bottom here? Rise of the Machines. Not bad, eh? Give it a few more moments. I know these things take a while, but you won't be disappointed. Should we give a listen to the first one? Do you know what's happened? Hold on. Right, it's done an instrumental. I didn't mean it to do an instrumental. I want it to create a full song. Let's do another one.
But can this tool incorporate
vocals? Yeah, it
yes,
does everything
vocals.
for you. Let me give you an example. Someone said to me they want to write an R&B song about their love of fast food from McDonald's and KFC. This is what it's given me.
Late at night, can't resist the urge. Gotta get my fix, gotta satisfy the hunger.
Thanks.
Walking down the street with a swagger in my step.
But is this
'Cause I
voice
know just where I'm
artificial,
going.
or is it
Artificial, completely artificial.
okay?
All right, here's one. Here's the rock song with the vocals.
Digital demons creeping in skies. AI taking over, messing with our lives. Robots on the rise. It's getting real.
Yeah.
They're out for domination.
Another one. So it's giving me the same lyrics, but in a different beat. But it gives you two for every one.
In the skies. AI taking over, messing with our lives. Robots on the rise. Hey, it's getting real. They're out for domination.
So it's called Suno. Go and check it out. Go and play around with it. It's really cool. And I was just about to get onto this, Pierre. Yes, you can. You have to use another AI tool. So, for example, if we want to take this Rise of the Machines, I'm going to take the beat. To take the beat one, it's easier. So you can see here, you've got these three buttons. You can go to download. You download the audio. All right. It's downloaded to my machine. And then you go to another thing called Fader. I think it's called Fader. Here it is. And you've got in here, you've got something called stems. Go upload songs. You upload your MP3. Does some thinking. And it's now stemming them out for you. And then you will be able to download the drums, the bass, the melodies. There we go. Look, it's all there. And you just said download stems. All right. And it's telling you the BPM and the key of the song as well. All right. This has helped me out greatly because I have used Suno to generate ideas. I like some of the ideas, but because it's still very rough. I make music for a living, and I'm not going to put out something like that. I need to go in and reproduce it. I will then take those stems, look at reproduce the drums, look at the melodies and reproduce everything. But that way it kind of gives me a better idea as to what to do. But fader would be to do your stems, but there's other things that allow you to do your stems. Any other questions whilst we're here?
I don't see anything else in the chat. Maybe, and we are also running out of time. Maybe to sort of conclude and to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Ash, for sharing all of this. So just to give you one last question. What is your long-term vision for integrating AI and generative AI into music and art education?
I think it's very, very exciting. I'm excited for it. I'm super happy when I see people use it and they use it within the realms of their creativity. I think because now, and I mentioned it earlier on right at the beginning about quantum computing, it's going to get very, very interesting at that stage because machines are going to be very, very powerful. Generative AI is going to be super quick, super responsive. Right now we're living in a very interesting period, a very exciting time where we are actually experiencing this exponential growth in technology. So we're going to be wowed quite heavily. We are currently wowed, but we've just got to remind ourselves that, we still are humans, and, it's okay. Like that, this is human existence, that, things are supposed to change, when, I don't want to work as hard as I used to. And I'm sure, 1,000 years ago when it was all workforce, human driven. People are now saying, oh, I'm concerned of my jobs and this and that. I say, well, let it happen. Maybe we're not supposed to work as hard as we're supposed to in the next 100 or 100, 200 years, you know? And I guess lastly, I was going to show you these slides, but I just wanted to show you these things. I thought it was really important, and it just shows you how I think. I read this book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. He's one of my favorite producers, and there's this passage in here that I want to leave you with, and it really kind of I can't move my screen. Does someone want to read it? I can't move my.
We can see your screen. We can read it.
Yeah, that's fine. But this passage really moved me because it made me understand that it's all about process. You know, it's all about the way in which you do something, and you being present in the moment in that act of creating. Doesn't matter what it is that you're using. It could be AI, it could be your traditional pen, paintbrush, it could be your guitar, it could be doing stuff on the drums, whatever it might be. But I think it's all about the process. And I think if you've all read that, the book is, I'm not endorsed by Rick Rubin, by the way, but I just think it's a really good book. It's called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. It's an amazing book about how to think, like it makes you feel better about the way in which you do your work. But AI versus humans, prompt versus process, and oops, there we go. Prompt versus process, result versus experience. All right. And I think the key here is to find balance within this. You know, you are a human being, you're going to process things. You're creative, and I think that's very special because you're going to think very different. And I think experiencing that is very, very important. As much as getting to the result is important as well. But that's my final words, guys. I hope it's given you a bit more kind of shone some light on the way I work, how I work, and I hope it's been good for you guys.
Definitely. Thank you so much again for joining and for sharing all of this with us. I also put the resources that you mentioned in the chat so everybody could see them. Thank you all for joining us today. Hope it was interesting for you. And also in the chat, you can find the link to our next webinar, which is going to be on the 21st of May. And there we will talk more about inclusion and equity in education with the use of AI tools. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Ash, again.
Thank you guys for having me. Take care.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.